The message arrived encoded in a fractal signal that took Earth's brightest minds days to decipher. An invitation, or perhaps a summons, from the Galactic Concordium. The words were as stark as they were intimidating: show strength or stay forgotten. It wasn't just a request, it was a demand. Humanity had only recently entered the interstellar stage, a fledgling presence among ancient and advanced civilizations. The United Earth Diplomatic Corps convened immediately, pulling military leaders, scientists, and politicians into the same crowded chamber. Arguments erupted like wildfire. Some called for a display of military might, Earth's newest battlecruiser armed to the teeth and flanked by smaller warships. Others proposed showcasing humanity's technological advancements, orbital construction, AI systems, or terraforming capabilities. In the midst of the chaos, a voice rose, cutting through the noise. Strength isn't just weapons or machines. It's survival. It's adaptation. The room turned to Sarah Voss, the diplomat known for her unorthodox methods and a resume that read like the log of an extreme survivalist. Growing up in Earth's most inhospitable regions, she had climbed frozen peaks, trekked scorching deserts, and swum across deadly currents. She had survived where others couldn't, and that, she argued, was the truest measure of strength. Skepticism was palpable. Sarah's suggestion to represent humanity alone, without military backing or technological fanfare, seemed reckless to many. Diplomacy isn't a solo sport, one general scoffed. But Sarah stood firm, her confidence unnerving. They don't need to see our weapons or our machines. They need to see what humans are made of. The debate ended with her selection, not out of unanimous agreement, but because time was running out. The Galactic Concordium wouldn't wait forever. The ship they sent her on was deliberately modest. No warships, no military escort, just a diplomatic vessel equipped with basic life support and communication systems. As they approached the alien station, an enormous construct orbiting a neutron star, Sarah reviewed her approach one final time. She carried only a small case, locked and reinforced. Its contents were a closely guarded secret, known only to her. The crew, a mix of seasoned diplomats and engineers, was tense. "What do you think they're expecting?" one asked. Sarah shrugged. "Strength," they said. "Let's hope they recognize it when they see it." The station came into view, a swirling mass of organic and mechanical architecture. It seemed alive, pulsating faintly as if in rhythm with the neutron star's deadly energy. They docked in silence, the alien atmosphere oppressive even through the ship's reinforced hull. The docking bay was enormous, filled with representatives of the Concordium. Towering beings with iridescent exoskeletons, floating gelatinous forms with shifting colors, and crystalline creatures whose movements sounded like breaking glass. Sarah stepped forward, the smallest presence in the room, yet walking with an unyielding calm that made even her crew take notice. The alien leader, a massive figure with multiple segmented limbs, spoke first. Its voice resonated in their minds rather than their ears. "You bring no ships, no weapons. Is this humanity's strength? Or its weakness?" Sarah smiled, unflinching. "Strength comes in many forms. I'll let you decide which one we've brought." The alien leader's many eyes glinted, a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Then you accept the terms of the test?" it asked, its mental voice sharp and probing. Sarah's calm response seemed to catch it off guard. "I do. Explain the challenge." The chamber shifted, the walls transforming into fluid-like surfaces that displayed a holographic landscape. Jagged cliffs, searing winds, predators with gleaming teeth, and dense, venomous foliage filled the projection. It was an alien ecosystem crafted to replicate what the Concordium referred to as a deathworld, a term used to describe planets so hostile they were deemed uninhabitable for most advanced species. "You will be placed within this environment," the leader explained. "It is not merely a test of survival, but one of resourcefulness and resolve. The strongest beings thrive here. Weak ones perish quickly. Most who attempt it fail." The other aliens, gathered in a semicircle, began to murmur among themselves. Many looked unimpressed. A small, fragile humans surviving in such an environment seemed laughable. They had all undergone their own versions of this test during their species initiations and couldn't fathom someone like Sarah succeeding. Time limits? Sarah asked, her tone so even it made some of the observers glance at one another. 48 standard hours, the leader replied. You may request to terminate early if you wish to admit defeat. Noted, Sarah said. I'll enter alone. This caused a ripple of reactions. The Concordium's challenges often allowed participants to bring tools or small teams, even for simulated trials. For her to willingly forego these options was seen as arrogance or ignorance. The leader leaned closer, its massive form looming over her. You are aware that every deathworld simulation adapts to its participant? It will target your weaknesses, human. Sarah's gaze didn't waver. I understand. The simulation chamber opened, and Sarah stepped inside without hesitation. As soon as the door sealed, the projection became her reality. The arid heat of the environment hit her immediately, the air dense and heavy with a metallic tang. Around her, the ground cracked and shifted, as though alive. High above, alien predators circled, their forms only partially visible against the blazing sun. The Concordium representatives watched through the display outside, expecting her to falter. They had seen countless participants fail, some overwhelmed within minutes, others dragged down by their inability to adapt to the ever-changing conditions. But Sarah moved with purpose. She began by scanning her surroundings, noting the shifting terrain, identifying potential threats and opportunities. She avoided the open areas, instinctively seeking shelter in the shadow of a jagged cliff. She seems oddly calm, one observer remarked. Does she not understand the severity of the challenge? She is human, another responded. Primitive and fragile. It's likely ignorance, not confidence. Inside the simulation, Sarah's mind raced, but her body remained steady. Every step she took was measured, every decision calculated. She didn't waste energy, didn't panic. This wasn't her first time surviving an unforgiving environment, and she had no intention of it being her last. The aliens watched as the simulation began to shift, throwing its first major trial at her. They leaned in, eager to witness what they assumed would be her inevitable failure. The environment shifted violently, the ground beneath Sarah's feet cracking open to reveal molten rivers that spewed toxic fumes. Above, a predatory creature dove, its elongated wings cutting through the thick air with unsettling precision.
Sarah didn't panic.
She crouched low, her eyes scanning the terrain, her mind working through every possible move. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the predator's talons, and slid behind a jagged rock formation. Her breathing steadied as she assessed the creature's flight pattern. It circled overhead, searching for her. Sarah grabbed a sharp shard of stone, its edges brittle but capable of puncturing if used correctly. The creature swooped again, but this time she was ready. She lunged sideways at the last moment, driving the shard into its exposed flank. It screeched in pain, veering off, its body wobbling as it struggled to stay airborne. Sarah didn't watch it fall. Instead, she moved toward higher ground. She knew better than to linger. The environment was dynamic, and staying still was a death sentence. Every sound, every shift in the wind, signaled danger or opportunity. Her movements were deliberate, conserving energy as she climbed a rocky slope. As she reached a small plateau, the temperature plummeted, the arid heat replaced by a sudden, biting cold. Frost began forming on the surfaces around her, and an icy fog rolled in. Sarah knew this was no natural shift but the simulation's way of testing her adaptability. She smiled faintly to herself. Extreme contrasts were nothing new. Growing up on Earth had taught her that survival wasn't about comfort but endurance. She quickly layered her clothing, using fragments of material she had scavenged from the environment. Wrapping herself tightly, she began searching for a heat source. The fog concealed her surroundings, but she trusted her instincts, moving cautiously toward an area where she had noticed faint thermal activity earlier. The ground here was slick with ice, and her footing faltered. A sudden rumble sent her heart racing as the plateau cracked, separating into smaller fragments. She jumped to a more stable section, narrowly avoiding a fall into an abyss below. Her hands stung from the cold, but she pressed on, her determination unshaken. From the observer's chamber, the aliens watched with increasing intrigue. What had begun as a smug expectation of her failure was shifting into something else entirely. Her movements are precise, one noted, the crystalline tones of its voice tinged with surprise. She calculates risks in real time. Calculation isn't enough, another replied. She's not using any advanced technology. No tools, no weapons beyond what she's made herself. This is unprecedented. Back in the simulation, the fog began to lift, revealing a small, thermal vent steaming faintly in the distance. Sarah approached cautiously, the heat offering relief to her frozen extremities. She took a moment to rest, her body curled near the vent to absorb its warmth. Despite the alien nature of the simulation, her instincts guided her as though she were back on Earth, surviving one of its harsh winters. The plateau trembled again, but this time the movement wasn't environmental. A massive, hulking predator emerged from the fog, its 6 legs pounding against the icy ground. Its eyes gleamed with intelligence, and Sarah knew it was the apex predator of this simulation. It wouldn't be fooled by simple tricks. She didn't run. Instead, she crouched low, observing its movements. The predator circled her, testing her reactions, waiting for a mistake. Sarah's mind raced, recalling every encounter she'd survived on Earth. Predators didn't rely solely on strength, they relied on dominance. If she could disrupt its confidence, even briefly, she could gain the upper hand. She picked up a handful of the icy shards around her and hurled them with calculated force. One struck the creature's sensitive eye, and it roared in pain, its steps faltering. That was all she needed. Using the momentary distraction, she scaled a nearby rock face, positioning herself above the predator. When it lunged at her, she leapt toward it, driving a jagged fragment of rock into the soft tissue behind its neck. The predator buckled, its massive frame collapsing. Sarah rolled away as it crashed to the ground, its roar fading into silence. She stood, bruised and exhausted but victorious. The observers watched in stunned silence. She adapts, one finally said, breaking the stillness. Not just to the environment, but to every new challenge we place before her. She's not like the others, another murmured. She doesn't rely on tools or superior strength. She relies on something more. Inside the simulation, Sarah pressed forward, knowing the trial wasn't over yet. But her resolve was unshaken. Every obstacle, every shift in the environment, only fueled her determination. This was what humanity did best: face impossible odds and find a way to survive. The simulation ended as abruptly as it began. The jagged landscape around Sarah dissolved, replaced by smooth metallic walls and the faint hum of alien machinery. She stood still, her breathing heavy but controlled, her mind already preparing for what would come next. The chamber doors slid open, revealing the gathered Concordium representatives. Their expressions, or their alien equivalents, ranged from curiosity to disbelief. The leader, who had spoken earlier with a tone of condescension, now approached slowly, its many limbs moving in a rhythm that betrayed uncertainty. "You survived," it said, the words reverberating in her mind. "I did more than survive," Sarah replied evenly. "I adapted. I endured. And I thrived." The leader studied her, its segmented eyes narrowing. "You faced the apex predator and prevailed. You endured the shifts of our most unforgiving simulation. Yet you used no advanced tools or weapons. Explain how." Sarah set down the small case she had carried with her since the beginning of the journey. The aliens watched as she unlocked it and carefully opened the lid. From within, she withdrew a single, unassuming object, a living dandelion encased in a transparent, self-sustaining capsule. The reaction was immediate. Confusion rippled through the gathered aliens, their voices overlapping as they tried to comprehend the significance of the item. "Is this a weapon?" one asked. "A symbol of your strength?" Sarah held the capsule up, letting the artificial light glint off the tiny, fragile plant. "This is a dandelion," she began, her voice calm but firm. "On Earth, it is considered a weed. It grows in cracks of concrete, in soil too poor to sustain most plants, in conditions where life should not thrive. Yet it does. It endures. It spreads. It thrives where others cannot." She stepped forward, holding the capsule so that even the furthest representatives could see it. "This is humanity's strength. Not just our ability to survive, but to adapt, to turn obstacles into opportunities. Like the dandelion, we take root in the harshest environments. We grow where others would wither. We persist." The chamber fell silent. The leader's many eyes studied the small plant, its thoughts unreadable. Finally it spoke. "You claim this fragility is strength?" "It's not fragility," Sarah corrected. "It's resilience. Your test was designed to measure brute strength and endurance, but those aren't the only forms of power. Strength is creativity. It's adaptation. It's the will to face impossible odds and keep moving forward." The leader turned to the other representatives, their mental voices intertwining in a discussion too rapid for human ears to follow. The tension in the room was palpable, but Sarah remained steady. She had done what she set out to do. Now it was up to them to decide. After what felt like an eternity, the leader faced her again. "Humanity has shown a form of strength we did not anticipate. Your trial was not just passed, it was redefined." The chamber resonated with unanimous agreement from the gathered representatives. "Earth will join the Concordium. Humanity's perspective is necessary." Sarah gave a small nod, her expression composed, though relief flickered in her eyes. As the chamber doors closed behind her, she left the dandelion on display, a reminder to the Concordium that strength isn't always what you expect, it's what endures.